there's been something. Are you on X at all?
No.
Oh, okay, you're not. Interesting.
I'm on no social media. I mean, I post stuff on Instagram or whatever, but those are like, it's business. Just business.
You don't do social media at all?
I mean, I have Facebook accounts and Instagrams.
We're recording this. This is good content. This is good content.
Yeah, okay. I mean,
no.
We
okay.
can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah,
so
okay,
why?
Okay, hang on. All right. This is the Seeing Eye to Eye podcast, episode
7.
Got
Been
it.
a long time, but we're back at it. We had a meeting, and I think that kind of threw off our schedule a little bit. The ASCRS meeting, which is a really good meeting for anterior segment surgeons, folks that do cataract surgery like us.
What's the anterior segment for the Gen Pop?
Okay, for Gen Pop, anterior segment means the front part of the eye, basically. So cornea to lens. So cornea is in the front, lens is sort of in the front middle. Anything behind that would be posterior segment, and that's more like retina surgeons. That's their land. That's where they work. But most eye surgeons are anterior segment surgeons, so mostly cataract surgery, like we do at Austin Eye. But we were talking about something else before we started. Oh yeah, social media. You asked me if I have any social media accounts, and I do, but just for work, basically.
So let's pull the thread on that. Do you have a Facebook account?
There is a Facebook account that I can access, and it's not that I've shut it down, but it just sits there on its own. It's stagnant. I'm not contributing any content. It's effectively dead from like their perspective, from a marketing, money, whatever they want, extracting data.
Instagram? Are you on Instagram?
I have an Instagram, and I guess recently I accidentally been posting some of my surgical posts on there, but I'm thinking it was my business Instagram. And actually that was way more popular on my personal one than on the business one. So maybe I should do more on my personal, but I don't actively post things that are personal really on there anymore. Okay. And the reason why I got off all this stuff is that there's sort of like a doom scrolling effect, I think, and just sort of the fear of missing out. I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but like you're just scrolling and people only put like the coolest things they've ever done on there, and they're constantly putting stuff up there. I'm in Peru. I'm in whatever, Argentina. They're traveling all over the world, and you're like, I don't travel. I'm not getting out there and doing that stuff. And so it just kind of wears you down. And so I had to get off. It was affecting me. I don't know if you've ever felt that. Do you have I think you have social media accounts.
I do have social media. What spurred this is I asked you, are you on X?
Oh, right.
Formerly known as Twitter. And you said...
No. Oh, that one. Okay, that one I got rid of years ago. Circa 2012, I had a Twitter, and the politics of it all really got to me. I found it very negative. I found it to be a very toxic place. And this is like old school Twitter back when things were like, more regulated and whatever compared to what it is now. And even then, everyone was so negative about everything in the world that I had to get off. It affected me, my mental health, to be on there and just read about how every decision by every politician was terrible.
How do you... So you're off of social media because is it a fair comment to describe it as it's toxic?
Yeah, I think or Twitter at the time was toxic, and then Instagram was toxic in a different way. So yeah, both different versions of toxicity. Sort of one is just negativity and the other one's hyperpositivity. And they're both so unrealistic that it messed with my head. Like, because the reality, I think, is in between the two. There's the average is what most of us are going through, most of us feel. When you're exposed to these highs and lows, I think it's good.
We could go on and on about that topic. I'm a version of you. I have Instagram, I have Facebook, I have X. I actually like X for information.
Sure.
Everybody has their own political views. I filter myself from posting political views.
Smart.
Probably 99% of the time.
Like you're about to hit send and
yes,
you stop?
I think it and I go, it's just going to lead to nothing positive, so I don't post it.
Yeah.
And then I'm not on TikTok, although probably maybe I'm missing out. I don't know if I am. I'm not on TikTok. There's this Instagram version of X called Threads. I am not on that. I am on LinkedIn, but I don't post much. I'm not a big poster. So like I post on my personal accounts maybe 3 times a year.
Wow.
That's it.
Wow.
Yeah. And I actively unfollow people who overpost, who share too much of how great their lives are, because it's so unrealistic. It is, to me, toxic. So I only will watch people who post kind of normal stuff, not look at me, and I'm posting because I really want that attention and I want you to hit a like.
Right.
Yeah.
They don't want to. You don't want them to seem desperate, I guess.
I don't know. There is a how would you describe it? A part of the human brain that the social media programs know that it's kind of narcissistic, and people want that attention, and it kind of feeds upon itself.
Then why? Okay, but most people are followers, right? Most people aren't posters. And that's not very narcissistic.
I don't know. There's the temptation of there's the FOMO where if you don't post, then you must not have a life. So you have to post. So a person really has to have a strong sense of self in order to not post. In a way, that's like the power move, to not over post about yourself, because you don't need that external validation. But a lot of people it's like air to them. They breathe that external validation. It's very important. I mean, it's a real deal. I understand.
Do you ever worry? You said on X, it sounds like you tailor who you follow, right?
Yes.
Do you ever worry you're in an echo chamber, either culturally, politically, anything?
I mean, I like what I'm seeing on X, good and bad, and I'm just there to learn.
Do you ever follow someone just so you could be angry? Like someone you just disagree with on something?
No, but I find when I'm scrolling on X, I'm laughing a lot.
Oh, okay.
So it's humorous. Whatever the algorithm has found, I click on things that make me laugh. So it's actually quite positive for me.
Yeah, I guess I always look at it so utilitarian. Like I want an as unbiased or spread information source as possible, and I wouldn't really use it for humor. I would use it for information.
Then where do you get your news from?
I try to go to different websites that are, I guess, mainstream media websites, and I try to go to different ones every day and read what each of them is posting about and compare them.
What websites?
So I'll go on CNN. People love CNN. I go on CNN. I go on BBC. I'll go on Fox News. I'll go on, for fun, Yahoo. They have the worst news, but it's just fun to see what Yahoo thinks is important. Sometimes Google News, and that's all I got. My dad does Apple News, but those are usually the ones I go to. It's very interesting to see what's on the front page of CNN, and then to go to the front page of Fox News. Opposite. I usually have to scroll all the way to the bottom on one or the other to find what the other one's leading with. Very interesting. Highly recommend. Take a day and just compare and contrast the two. We don't have to get too much into politics, but I think those two are very different sites that presumably speak for a lot of people, and they have totally different thoughts on what the most important issue is of the day. Very interesting.
So we searched what are the top news sources for U.S. citizens in 2024. Pew Research Center, People USA Today, and the New York Times saw double-digit growth, year-over-year change in visits. Top 10 news websites in the U.S. March 2024. People.com.
Never heard of it. I mean, I guess People Magazine.
People Magazine, yes. USA Today, New York Times.
Okay.
There's your Yahoo. Washington Post. There's your CNN. There's your Google, MSN, Fox News.
So, okay, I got a few of the top. Well, they're decreasing in their frequency, but they're still top.
They're
websites.
in the top 10. New York Post saw the biggest month-on-month growth in the top 10.
Isn't New York Post like a
It's like a
paparazzi deal?
I'm not sure. I think it may be a more centrist or right-leaning version of New York News. I'm not sure. I'll find this out.
I'm on their website right now. It doesn't look super professional. Not that that matters.
Right.
But
It seems to be kind of like a distant relative of National Enquirer, but I just see it because people on Fox News sometimes hold up the New York Post print edition,
Sure.
the headline on the front page.
Yeah, today's headline is Celebrity Chef Using Legal Loopholes to Avoid Paying Rent for the Past 4.5 years. That's the most important story in America right now, ladies and gentlemen.
Americans
One man
want to know.
in New York didn't pay rent one time or for a long time.
So month-over-month change in visits, top 10 news websites: New York Post, New York Times, USA Today, Wash Post, CNN, MSN, Fox News, Google, Yahoo. You're pretty much on it.
All right, that's good to know.
Now, let's see here. So my assertion, my theme is that people use social media to acquire their news.
Sure, but they're sourcing it from traditional media sources. Like at the end of the day, All In, whatever, they're going to cite an article, right? Articles come from traditional media corporations.
Right.
They discuss it, but they're citing media. That's the part that I always find kind of funny. It's usually an Associated Press article. That's what it boils down to. At some point, someone has to do reporting. Someone does, and it has to be of a certain integrity. Now, that is controversial, but what is reporting, right? I mean, it gets a little complicated, but you need someone that hopefully is as minimally biased as possible to report on the event. Now, it's great if you just have a video of it. That's, let the person judge, figure out what happened. But that's so rare, even nowadays with phones. At some point, someone has to synthesize the information, talk to sources, go out and really pull things in together. It's a research project, basically. And at the end of the day, at least as it is now, you still need people that are reporters to get most of this information.
Today.
So what's the future? AI is going to make
large language models.
How do we know, or why wouldn't I create an LLM, large language model, that would collect data in a way to my liking, report in a certain way to my liking, for example?
There was one of the AI programs, I think it was through Google, I forgot the name of it. It was woke AI, basically. Remember?
Right. Yeah, they draw a picture of the presidents, the first founding fathers or something like that.
Yes, and there were no white people.
Right. So that's a really good example of bias introduced, and that's a problem.
Yes.
And so my concern is, okay, in this case, they were able to hold Google accountable. I think it was Google, and they changed. I think they got rid of it, actually. They just took it down, got rid of that program. But in the future, where LLMs become less centralized, I mean, it already is happening. There's open source AIs. And we start having reporters that are AIs that have been trained by someone. They're going to be biased towards whatever that person wants. And it'll be harder and harder to hold them accountable because LLMs are machines.
It's called Gemini. It was Gemini AI. That was the one that was woke AI.
But am I going to take, in 20 years, Gemini 4.07 to court? Or do I take the person who designed Gemini? Like, if there's some sort of bias, there's no one that can be held accountable. That's my concern. Whereas a person can be held accountable. A person has something to lose. An AI doesn't. It has nothing to lose. It's just following orders. It's a smart soldier.
So let's look at this together. This is social media, Pew Research, social media and news fact sheet, news consumption on social media, percentage of adults who get news from social media. 2022, 17% often, 33% sometimes, about 50% rarely or never. This is 2022.
I also go on Reddit often. Now, Reddit is super biased in its own way, but guess what it's citing? Media reports. They're always citing.
It's biased.
If you cite a tweet, that's pretty weak in my book because that's just a person talking.
Mm-hmm.
But they tend to cite media things because that carries more weight right now than it does. I could type whatever I want on X. and make it sound like a news story. Or I could have my AI do it. Who's going to hold that thing or person accountable? I don't know. But a news agency can hold a person accountable. This is maybe not something you agree with, but that's one of my concerns about decentralization.
Well, the original topic today was on our plan was actually technology.
Yeah, we got there.
So I was thinking about, you spoke eloquently about, what do you call it? Something brain interface?
Computer brain interface.
Computer
CBI.
brain interfaces. And you were going to speak about the Neuralink first patient. And the way I learn about that, and I haven't studied it in depth,
Sure.
is through the X platform, because I follow a lot of Elon Musk related topics or people or companies, and they post about that that gentleman who received it was the first recipient of the Neuralink implant.
Yeah, Nolan Arbaugh. I think I'm saying that right. And I mean, X is basically a advertising program for Tesla and Neuralink. And,
Oh, sure.
I mean, they're owned by the same person, so that's not surprising.
Sure.
I mean, have you been through X? Were you introduced to the other robot systems that are available?
I'm aware of the humanoid robot
Which one?
that is being manufactured by Tesla.
Oh, by Tesla. But what about its competitors?
I am aware of some of the competitors, but I don't follow them
Yeah.
closely because I don't think that they will be able to compete with the financial capabilities of Tesla.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, do you want to talk about Neuralink first, or we can talk right now about the robots?
Why don't you take the lead?
Yeah. So let's see. Let's talk about the robots. So AI is interesting, how to make a computer think, but in a more practical sense, how do we take a person who's already thinking, how do we give them back their mobility and access to the world? It's sort of like an inverted problem or the opposite problem. Or how do we make dangerous jobs safer and not involve humans, but rather machines, which maybe can be trained on AI or controlled by people. And so that's the future right now. There's two futures happening right now: artificial intelligence and then, I guess, robotics. And then the two are overlapping at different points. You talked already about the Tesla robot. It's called Optimus. There's two. We're on generation 2 right now. And it's a really neat looking robot. I think it's the most humanoid, human-like looking robot that I've seen out there. Have you seen the videos of it training?
Yes. The most recent one where it was placing batteries into a receptacle.
Yeah, we should show that one. Okay.
Here it is.
Yeah, this is the video. Ooh. Can you put the sound off?
Yeah. Hang on.
Okay, so this Optimus 2, what it's doing right here is it's sorting batteries. I guess these are the cells that go into a Tesla car. Is that right?
Maybe.
I think that's what they're doing. So this is good stuff, right? To see that it can sort. I think they also showed at one point making a mistake and then correcting the mistake. And they did this by having a person. First, they did it by having a person teleoperate or stand next to it and do the motions with a VR headset on. And they use a neural network to train it. So here we go. We can see the people moving and the Tesla Optimus 2 synced up with that. And basically it's a farm of technicians that just do these repetitive motions. Hopefully, again, the idea is that you can let go a little bit and it can do the task on its own. Many robots have already done this, though. This is not unique to the Optimus 2. Let's see. Other robots that can do this are the Sanctuary AI. It's on slide 4 of the PowerPoint. Yeah, we can watch this thing do its job. So what I was saying is that it's nothing special so far. Yes, there's nothing special about what Optimus 2 has done in terms of sorting and organization.
Who makes this? Sanctuary AI?
Sanctuary AI is a Canadian company. I think they're called, Sanctuary AI.
Okay.
And you could see it doing a similar task. Is it the exact same thing? No, but the idea is that in this case, it's actually identifying and separating things. Now, he doesn't do a very good job of fixing that one that falls over. That really bothered me when I watched this, whereas I think the Tesla one would notice a tip over. But again, he's sorted by color here, which is different. It's actually a little more advanced. His hand articulation isn't as good, though. That's what everyone says is the advantage for the Optimus 2, the hands.
Yeah, so when I look at this, I'm reminded of the engineering capabilities of Tesla to manufacture, to create, because, you know, if you're an engineer coming out of college right now, who are the top 2 companies that are most coveted by engineers?
I honestly don't know. I guess you're leading me towards Tesla, but I don't know if that's true.
And number 1 is SpaceX, number 2 is Tesla.
Okay.
So it's almost like an unfair talent advantage. It would be as if I own the Los Angeles Lakers, but I have no salary cap, and I can actually hire, and I'm so attractive to the most talented professional basketball players that I can create a super team. So Tesla has access to the best talent, and they have the most financial resources being invested in engineering and designing and building these, I guess they call them actuators or parts and machines. And they're investing, I think Elon Musk said he's going to invest something like $10 billion this year on AI. So if you think about that, what can Sanctuary AI do to grow AI? They can do it, but they just don't have probably $10 billion to invest, and they don't have access to the brightest engineering talent. And Tesla has already this understanding of vision in, controls out with its automotive AI. They're trying to apply that to the Optimus humanoid robot. So they have a humongous advantage. They have advantage in terms of development. They have the advantage in terms of engineering. They have proven that they can design things at scale. Elon famously says, prototypes are easy. Creating things at scale is enormously different. And so these companies, they may be able to develop 1 or 2, but to eventually mass market and mass produce them, it's a completely different ballgame. That's why all these other electric vehicle manufacturers, like the Lucid car, they say it's a really good looking electric vehicle sedan, but they say it costs like $370,000 each to produce. And so Lucid has to lose money on every car they produce because they can't sell it for that much.
But is there an idea with Lucid similar to Tesla? Like Tesla's selling potential, right? That's the whole economic plan right now for Tesla.
Potential, but they're actually,
we can do things.
Yeah, let's say Tesla never even had the capability of doing autonomous driving. They're simply able to manufacture at scale. So let's say you take an auto company like Rivian, which is pretty popular. If you let's look at U.S. annual sales, 19,000.
Not very much.
Let's look at, let's compare it apples to apples. USA. In 2020, they sold 654,000 in 2023 versus Rivian, 19,000. See, the ability to produce at scale is huge.
Sure.
So keep going about these robots. It's very interesting, but that's why it's a great technology to follow because it will become a reality.
Another company, slide 3, is Astribot. So you're talking about advantages. This company's from China. Now, admittedly, this robot, to my eye, is the least impressive of the robots.
Slide 3. Okay, fire
Let's
away.
watch this thing. So this robot is the least impressive in terms of, to my eye, mobility, all that. I mean, they never show this thing's legs. So that's a little sketchy to me.
Yeah.
It can't even, I don't even know if it has wheels. Are there, what's the deal? Now it's really good. It's good at stacking stuff, and it can identify things as well as the Tesla Optimus 2, and it can do all these tricks, but it has some limitations. But it is from China, and China's all about dumping resources into technologies at will. And so this gives them a little bit of an edge, I think, in the long run. If we're going to talk long run, maybe China invests in this company and leans into this so they can keep up with Tesla, if not surpass them. I don't know. What do you think about bid in these electric car companies out of China?
All I know is the two large electric vehicle manufacturers in China are NIO and BYD.
BYD, yeah.
And I don't follow them closely, but they're strong competitors to Tesla.
Because of scale,
Yes.
cost. They have all the battery materials in their homeland on their turf. I don't think. Well, I know some batteries are sourced from America, but some amount is sourced from abroad, right? I mean, a good chunk of batteries that Tesla uses are from America. It's part of the stipulation for the $7,500 tax credit, if I'm not mistaken. But some of it is coming from abroad, whereas China doesn't have that problem. They have all the cadmium and lithium or whatever they're putting in these batteries under their feet, and they can just go. So while this thing is kind of goofy looking, there's potential. Hey, you can open your wine. You're having a nice night. Watch this movie he's about to do. It's kind of cool. Oh, yeah. All right. Can the Optimus do that? I don't think so. Not right now.
So this is a Chinese company, Astrobot.
Uh-huh.
And your prior company
was Canadian. So
this is the one we were talking about
fewer
earlier?
Resources. Yeah,
Canadian.
the Sanctuary AI.
Uh-huh.
Another thing you pointed out was the actuators. So the video of the Sanctuary AI is clearly using actuators. It's more bulky. Kind of like the earlier Optimus models that Tesla had, and now it's like full electric for the Optimus Generation 2, and then same for Astrobot, where this one seems to, this one seems to have hydraulics, which makes it bulkier, heavier, and less likely to be scalable, which is a concern.
Interesting.
So another robot, we were talking earlier about Boston Dynamics. This is slide 5. This is the Atlas. New Atlas robot. So Atlas has been around forever. Have you seen the videos of Atlas?
Yes.
Original jumping around,
Yes.
doing dances. Now all those things were choreographed where the robots dancing together and doing cartwheels. But that was really impressive stuff to me. I think from a macro movement standpoint, Boston Dynamics has really shown that they can make robots that are very hardy, sturdy looking machines that can have a lot of applications. What they haven't shown and what Tesla's leaning into are the actuators with the hands. They haven't done fine motor. And if we watch the Atlas video, he just kind of folds up from the ground and kind of walks towards
This one
us.
here?
I think so. Yeah, he'll be on the ground. Yeah, this is it. This is their introduction video to Atlas.
And who owns Boston Dynamics?
Hyundai. And so this is actually kind of cool. So he's full electric, just like Optimus Generation 2. The original Atlas was actuator driven. He's very lightweight. I can't remember how much he weighs. It's similar to Optimus. And you could just see his mobility. He went from flat on the ground to flipping his legs over and popping up. I don't think anyone else can do that. So again, macro movements, they are winning right now. Who knows what the future shows. And, Boston Dynamics doesn't just make humanoid robots. On slide 6, we have their actual products. You can go and buy these right now. I assume anyone could buy these if you have enough money. So the first one on the left, the yellow one, that's called Spot. You may have seen him around factories or even in Israel. They're using him for military purposes, non-lethal military purposes, but they put little cameras on them and have them go into the tunnels in Gaza so that humans don't have to go in there. And he's very smart, and he can walk around and check on your factory and make sure everything's working. And they've added AIs or LLMs to Spot. He can talk to you. They have an LLM inside one of their Spot robots at their facility, and he acts as their tour guide, and he can answer any questions you have. It's pretty amazing. And then Stretch is the one on the right, is much more industrial. He has this articulating arm, and it has a suction system, so it can pick up big, heavy boxes and move it at heights. None of the other robots can do that. I mean, a humanoid robot would have to sit in another robot and drive it to make it do what Stretch can do. So that's kind of the lay of the land as far as I can tell in terms of robotics. It's exciting. I actually think it's good that we have all this competition and people are feeling the heat. I think Boston Dynamics kind of could rest on their laurels for a long time, and now Tesla and China with Astrobot are really threatening them, I think. So it'll be cool. I mean, what do you think? Could we get an Austin Eye robot? Would you get the first one?
I do believe that we will have robots. I think you'll have robots in your home to do things that we're unable to conceive at this point in May of 2024. So Elon Musk has stated that the humanoid robot program will far surpass the automobile program that they have at Tesla.
Sure.
It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, and we'll see how it unfolds.
Why does a robot have to look like a human? Why is that important, you think?
Because it makes people feel better, essentially.
Okay. Safer.
If you have something that doesn't look human-like, it is off-putting to humans.
I get that, I like that uncanny valley. Well, you need it like to look like a human, but not too much, right? You know, there's that creepy, uncanny valley situation in movies all the time. They'll have CGI or some sort of creature, and it just looks so close to being right that but it's not quite there, so it's a little wrong, and
Kinda
it just
like-
freaks you out.
Kind of like AI photography right now. Some people create AI social media accounts, and they look too perfect. And you look at it and you kind of go, something's not right. That's too perfect. So I don't know.
Messes you up. Do you watch Black Mirror? Have you ever watched that series on Netflix? If you look up Black Mirror, so this is a really intense episode of Black Mirror, but it's set in a future world where robotics has come to a very high level. And there are these robotic dogs that kind of look like Spot, the dog from Boston Dynamic. And they're military dogs, or military robotic dogs that will hunt you forever. Like once they get your scent, quote unquote, they just go. And so they're incredibly fast, they're resilient, they hunt in packs, and they have these very sharp knives. It's a terrifying episode.
A dog has a knife.
It's a robotic dog, is what it kind of feels like.
It has been compared to the Terminator, as both works feature machines chasing humans.
Very unsettling. I guess if you want to feel the opposite, like we've been very optimistic, I think, so far about robotics and talking about potential value added, like, you know, babysitting, factory work, that kind of stuff. But if you want to take it to the negative side, which I think is a very natural and common thing to do, is you think about Metalhead, the episode of Black Mirror. And if you watch that, you'll get a little nervous about pretty much everything we've been talking about, because like I was saying with AI and manipulating reporting, you could manipulate an AI to do whatever you want it to do. So you could train your Boston Dynamics Spot to wield a weapon, right? I mean, you could.
Yes.
It could be used for military purposes or just personal vendettas. It's scary a little bit. So how do you, it's like iRobot. You have to teach it the 3 tenets of being a robot. I don't know. That's something that really freaks me out, because with an AI right now, I can just close my computer and it can't touch me. But once the AI has hands, it can do anything. Anything.
There's so many things that can go wrong with AI. And they can and probably will be used in nefarious ways.
Do you think the military has an AI program we're not familiar with, or robotic systems that either match or surpass what we are seeing?
Well, I think one illustration of at least my not understanding technology is when Iran allegedly fired 2,000 missiles toward Israel, and almost none of them hit Israel because they have a technology called the Iron Dome.
Right.
I don't know how that works. I don't know how a missile exactly works, but the fact that it has that type of accuracy, that's pretty cool. That's Israel. What does the United States have? Probably something as good, if not better.
Yeah, I don't know if we have like as localized a defense. Like, I don't know if you're right across the border in Canada and you launched a similar missile, if we could intercept it at the same level. So what do they have? Maybe like if I was in the military, I would just sit around and watch Metalhead all day. And then I would go and call Boston Dynamics and be like, hey, although all these companies swear they'll never do military work, that's like part of their
I've seen Iron Man.
same.
I've heard of Stark Industries.
Yeah. Okay. All right. You're in the know. You read that on X, is it? Yeah, that's your. Yeah. Okay.
Well, Elon Musk is Tony Stark.
That's true. That's true. Right. Yeah. That's what he says. I mean, he is literally, you're not wrong. He's the closest thing to Tony Stark that has ever existed.
Yes.
Pretty much, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
pretty
can you
cool.
imagine being that guy? Wow. All right. So we talked a lot about robots. We talked about this the other day. One last thing about robots. One of the technicians, I think, asked you and me, hey, do you think robots are going to be doing eye surgery? We both kind of said, not really.
I
still
believe
stand by
it.
that?
I believe the robots will be doing eye surgery. I don't know to what extent and by when,
Sure.
but just as I believe that radiologists, and I've spoken with some radiologists who are friends of mine,
Former
and
friends. Yeah.
I said, what do you think of AI encroaching on radiology, which is
Sure.
interpreting digital images of the human body?
Mm-hmm.
And the radiologist said it won't happen anytime soon. I trust their judgment, but if I'm looking at it from my peripheral view, I'm thinking that's a little scary. I wouldn't really want to go into radiology as a profession. Ophthalmology or any surgical subspecialties, when will robots be doing it? I don't know, but I do believe it is possible.
Here's what I think about. I mentioned this at the time. I said, I don't think eye surgery is a priority right now. Like, there's so many other problems and use cases that have to be solved that eye surgery is very low on the list of problems that a robot can help us with. And so it'll take them a long time to get to a level where they can, they have to prove it's safe to a reasonable level because it's going to be regulated. It's going to be regulated. Someone's going to set a standard, and that'll slow them down a lot.
Oh, yes.
A lot.
The FDA,
Someone.
where medical devices and technologies go to die.
This is why Apple doesn't make EMRs, electronic medical records, or other tools that we use in the OR, because it's not profitable, because you invest so much into a product and it could work, but even though it works, it doesn't meet some arbitrary, or maybe not arbitrary, but reasonable or semi-reasonable or unreasonable expectation from the FDA, and you're toast. And so getting into healthcare, there's also the medical legal issues. Again, who will be responsible for this robot? Are we just going to click go, and then every time we hit go, it's up to Allergan or something? If something happens, then they get sued. These things matter. Like, who is responsible for the technology? A company, and the companies don't have enough money to resist that legal risk, I think. Now, if they make it so good, so safe that the risk is very low, so low, and they can really stand behind a product, then they may be willing to invest and take that risk. I don't know. That's the challenge.
It is impossible to predict. So, for example, when I was in my 20s in ophthalmic training, the thought that eye drops could be used to prevent cataracts was in the atmosphere, and
Right.
it's still not even close to my knowledge.
No, I mean, someone was talking to me the other day about it, either a patient or a technician or something, but that's the kind of innovation that if it happens, we're going to know about it. That's not something that gets to the ophthalmologist last. That's something we would hear first, right? Like, I hear what you're saying. I don't know. I think it's an exciting or an interesting thought. Like, ultimately, the thing that'll slow us down is the things that we value, like responsibility, our legal system, certain moral things are going to slow us down. And that's okay. I think it's okay. And that'll buy us, our careers will be done before they sort all that out, I think.
We're trying to predict the future. Very difficult thing
You're
to
worried
do.
this won't age well in 5 years. Well, that's...
No, I think this is cool. We're going to have this, this will live on for a long time, and we'll look back and 10 years and say, hey, what were we talking about then?
Right.
And in the year 2034, what is in existence?
Right.
And what were we talking about? It's like I follow. Okay, let me show you this guy. So this is another beauty of X. I'll show you. I follow this guy on X.
The perfect platform. Media, entertainment.
His name is Jon Erlichman. Jon Erlichman.
The man of Ehrlich.
Okay. I think he's a news person, but he posts a lot of these posts. Like, I find this interesting. Value of $10,000 invested 15 years ago. Let's say you had $10,000 and it's the year 2009.
Uh-huh.
One, did you have $10,000 in 2009 to invest? Two, did you pick these companies? Three, did you invest and did you have the cojones to ride the roller coaster up and down over a 15-year span, and what's the payout? And it's very interesting.
Where's Bitcoin?
Was Bitcoin around 15 years ago?
Yeah.
It was?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Maybe he didn't include it. All right, so he also, let me show you some other classic. He'll go back and say, oh, these technologies didn't exist when Tom Brady started playing football. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty interesting. Look, here's another one. Things that launched over a decade.
So from 2001 to 2010. Okay.
Yeah, so if you look back, this is when they launched.
Huh.
Over a decade ago.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, lots happening.
Oh, Bitcoin. So there's your Bitcoin question right there.
There you go.
Do you own any Bitcoin?
I want to.
I'm a former owner. I find these things
He's very
fascinating.
tech-oriented, clearly. He mostly talks about Apple and NVIDIA and all that.
No, he talks about technology and business. And what's our podcast about?
That stuff. Medicine, business.
There you go.
Life. Look at that guy. Whoa, Jeff. Looking rough.
Let's see here.
Looking strong.
Let's see here. He posts, I just find all of it. Look at value of $10,000 invested 20 years ago.
All those companies existed 20 years ago, or?
Probably they did.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, invest. Here's the funny thing, and this is just my naivete. It's like, never take the money out, ever. Ever? So
no,
you're just going to die, and then it just goes on to the next person, and they're just going?
Say that again.
So it just keeps going. It's
never take the money. So what are you referring to?
Hold.
Buy and hold.
Buy and hold. That's the strategy. That's the winning strategy for stocks, right? On the whole.
You think that?
That's what they're trying. That's what all these posts suggest. That's what many things say is what is it? Something about the market.
Don't time the market.
Don't time the market. Just wait forever.
It depends.
Until you die.
It depends on so many variables. It depends on your need for liquid assets, your age, life circumstances, financial needs at any given time. So, like, for example, I had stocks years ago. I bought Amazon, Google, Apple. Now, those are some of my winners, but I had them for about, 5 years, 7 years. And I don't follow them anymore. I still have some Apple, but I had a need to, for example, build this building.
Sure. Oh.
So I sold my Amazon, my Google, and my Apple stock because I needed money.
Wow.
So it's hard to keep things. Life happens. You're going to have children. You're going to have, let's say somebody in your family you have to pay for a wedding for your child, or you have to move to a new house, or buy a new car or a new camera.
Right.
You may have to sell. So it's hard to hold on to these assets. And plus, you might find that, another company may be undervalued while your company that you hold stock in is maybe a bit overvalued. Maybe you should sell out of that and sell it and
Yeah.
buy into. So it's a
That's
very
some
fluid
savvy.
situation. I don't have the answers, but it's hard to.
I just picture
hold.
these people though that they buy and they're like never sell, and then they have so much money and they're like, yes, I'm killing it, and they die. They never spent any of it. They never got to enjoy any of the value that they got from it. That happens. I'm sure a lot of people. I mean, you want to leave something. I assume most people want to leave something for their offspring and stuff like that. They're trying to create a generational wealth and all that. But maybe some people take it too far and then they die young or they die unexpectedly and they never got to do it. I don't know.
You can't take it with you.
Feel sad.
What does
about
my
that.
dad say? My dad has a new saying. It's not how much you have, it's what you do with what you have. That's his new saying.
That's a very, yeah, okay. What does that mean in his context? I don't know what that means.
It means that basically you should use wealth to do good things in the world.
Sure.
Before you leave, because everybody leaves with the same amount of assets.
Fair enough. And I mean, and you guys have done obviously some work, philanthropy work already. But then there's also the selfish, like, what about you guys? You know, like take care of yourself a little bit. And I think some people get so fixated on the numbers. It's just interesting.
Oh, the person who's the spinster who lives very modestly and then donates like $10 million to their church upon their demise.
Yeah, that's like every couple months there's a news story. Some janitor saved up and got like Google stock a million years ago. And now they're the hero, but they're dead. I'm like, that could have been a really nice life for that nice janitor. I mean, I guess who am I to judge? It's his life. It's his money. He could do whatever he wants.
If they're happy though, and I think so. I can only know like my grandparents where they grew up in the Depression and they were very fiscally responsible.
Sure.
And I think they had saved up quite a bit from investing over a lifetime.
It's great.
And they lived normal lives, but they didn't live anything over the top.
I guess you never know when the tap's going to run out. That's the other concern. You can spend, but if you overdo it, then you're like those young football players that burn up all their wealth and are like doomed at 27 to get an injury or something.
Or they're
it.
millionaires at age 24, multimillionaires, and then bankrupt at age 29.
You know, Chad Ochocinco, did we talk about this? You know his story?
No,
Chad?
he was good. He was a good receiver.
He's really good. He was in Cincinnati, where I'm from.
Let's learn about him.
So when Chad's different than other folks. He's super fiscally conservative. In fact, I think for many years when he started, like right out rookie, at very beginning.
For context, he played for the Bengals.
Yeah.
And
Cincinnati.
you're from
Cincinnati.
There you go.
Right. So in the Paul Brown Stadium, which is our terrible stadium, I think the name changed, in Cincinnati, he reportedly did not even own an apartment. He would sleep in the locker room for like years. He never wanted to spend any money on rent, and he bought nothing. Everything was reused. He's super careful, and he was extremely careful back then with all of his money that he got, and he took care of it. And as a result, he's set for life. But it was a very interesting story. You think about Chad, and you think about his sort of grandiose nature. He's a character. He's a very interesting, charismatic guy. And I don't know, at first glance, I wouldn't think, oh, this guy is super careful with his money and doesn't own a home and is essentially homeless, but in a nice football stadium, that he would be that careful. But he is. And you just never know with folks. But he's a good example of someone who really buckled down, even though he was young, a little naive in some ways, or you'd think he'd be naive, but he wasn't. He was prepared. And he's the kind of guy who should be careful with his money, because once he's done with football, he may not have anything else. He may not be good enough to speak on shows. Maybe he can't do color commentary. That's a gift. Not everyone can do that. So you only get one shot, basically, as a football player.
Did he make investments, or what did he do?
Man, I'm a little rusty on what he did, but I think so. I think he just held. literally. Maybe he wasn't investing, but he wasn't spending. And so he just kept the balance right in the force, and maybe too much so at times. And he talks about it, I think, on podcasts when he goes on. He's not what I would expect. I mean, you just would expect someone at his age with his popularity and his charisma to make some mistakes with their money. And he didn't. So kudos to Chad, and very impressive stuff. Whereas like his peers, I think
A successful Chad.
T.O. maybe.
Terrell Owens.
I think he's sort of the opposite, maybe, where they were popular at the same time, but maybe Terrell wasn't as good, or maybe he's similarly good.
Let's see what it says. Afrotech.com.
Yeah, here we go. So T.O.'s the opposite a little bit, although it says he let other people control his finances. So he's smart enough to find an outside person to guide it, because, I mean, he's busy being a professional football player, but it sounds like he may have gotten messed with, unfortunately. I didn't know that. But I know those two have been talked about or talked to each other about their finances and the differences in their paths.
Yeah, you wish the best for these people, but if they make poor financial decisions, it's unfortunate. Okay, so where did we get off the rails talking about technology, and now we're on Chad Ochocinco and Terrell Owens?
I mean, I think this is the Chad Ochocinco podcast. I really think that's what we're here to talk about. I think, okay, so let's talk about technology, but maybe a simpler technology.
Yes.
And this is sort of a new thing for me, something you've been in a little bit longer, and that's photography and having a camera. I mean, you're a media expert. You even gave a lecture at the ASCRS meeting that I mentioned at the top of the show. I mean, you're a established speaker on using tools like this camera I'm looking at right now to make content and share your knowledge and connect with people. And you had to have a good camera to do that, right? So you were kind enough to take me out because I was interested in getting my own camera. Here it is right here. And kind of show me some of the ropes and talk to the rep. And what's the name of the store we went to? We could do buzz marketing.
Precision Camera and Video.
Yeah, there you go. Open since
It's
the
the
70s.
greatest. This is not, we have no financial interest in any of the products we talk about here, and this is not a paid sponsorship, but
No.
Precision Camera in Austin, Texas is the best camera store I've ever been anywhere in the United States. It's just awesome.
If they offered to sponsor us, would we refuse? I don't know. We'll have to think about it.
That's fine.
Well, that's a future discussion. But it's a great store. I'd never been. Actually, I'd been very close to it. There's a toy store and a little kid shoe store that my kid goes to right next to it. So I've been close to greatness for many times, getting new shoes for my kid as he grows bigger and bigger.
The thing is that you were on the market for, I'm not sure. Why you've been using obviously a cell phone camera for a long time. Why did what kind of lit the fuse for you to go down the road of, I think I want to buy a DSLR camera?
Well, I've always been like the cameraman. When I was a kid, I would make movies with my brother all the time with our old camcorder. I don't even know. It wasn't VHS old, but it would save to, God, how did it save? I guess it just had an internal memory, and we would make movies all the time. We made a series called Court 49, which was a court show that I came up with where my brother and I would be like defendants or whatever, and we'd create these situations. And I think one time we put Santa on trial, and we had reindeers testifying.
Wait,
and all
you
this.
were making a movie with like one of those little camcorder things?
Yeah, with a tripod, and we had one of those. And
it was on VHS tape?
No, it wasn't that old. We did have VHS.
Like Super 8 videotape?
There was no actual film. It was still digital, but it was like crappy digital, old school, like, I don't know, 1999 to 2008 kind of flip around. You could flip it, but I don't think you could spin it the way ours can spin around and show you what you're actually doing. But you would flip it out, you put it on your tripod, you take off the little thing and hit go. And I would take all these videos and I'd go into iMovie. I was a kid. We had an Apple, and so I would edit all these movies, and we made all kinds of stuff. So I was always into like film and that kind of stuff. Since my dad worked, he was in radio, but he also made ads and stuff like that. So I was used to that sort of production concept. And I never liked scripts. I would always kind of just freewheel it and just maybe repeat it if we didn't like it. But we filmed some hilarious stuff, and unfortunately it got lost. I think all of it was lost. Back in the day, storage drives, like my dad had these Lacie storage drives, if you've ever used them.
LACIE.
Yeah, Lacie. So he always had for the time huge. Like, I mean, back in the day, like a terabyte was unheard of, but he had that because he had so much media that he was saving. So he had these drives, but they weren't like, they didn't have as high fidelity, and they would crash sometimes and get lost. And so unfortunately, it got taken out. So all of our childhood videos are gone. But again, that kind of sparked the idea of phone, cameras and stuff. I also, when I was a kid, you know, there's like summer camps where they teach you a skill as a kid. You can like, at a community college, you can go and take a little course as like a 12-year-old, and they teach you something. So I did photography. My parents got me a little camera. It was still digital, but it was one of those, you had the little built-in lens that could zoom in and zoom out a little bit, and you could take a picture and download it on your thing. It's very simple. And so
A point and shoot camera.
a point and shoot, yeah, digital, simple kind of thing. And so I did that, and then it kind of went away. And then smartphones came out, and obviously the technology that's in these things is amazing. If you compare it, like the sensor size and everything, to what a professional camera has, it's so small. It's amazing what it does. And it's all about the software, I think, right? And the 3 cameras.
It's very good in normal lighting. It's very good for at least the iPhone, which is what I use as my daily driver. Is very good with video.
Very good.
It's, I would say, good with pictures, not great. And everything does kind of break down in lower lighting.
Yeah, that's going to be true. And we can talk about that. If you go to slide 7, okay, I said the word sensor, right? So what's a sensor? That's a thing that collects information. In this case, it's light information. On my camera, I have what's called a micro four thirds, which is the bottom right. That's how big my sensor is on my camera. And I can show you the sensor right now. So it's right in there. And that little 4/3 rectangle is what collects all the light information. And it's 4/3 because that's 4/3 of an inch in diameter. Although it's a little smaller than that. And I think that's partly why they call it a micro 4/3. Also, it's just more compact. But that is the first thing you have to know about, is how much information can you collect per shot? And I'm stuck with 4/3, which is pretty good. It's better than the smaller sensors, which is probably what I had back when I was a kiddo. So the iPhone sensor is 4.5 by 3.4 millimeter, whereas the 4/3, which we showed you over there, is inch, 4/3 of an inch. A much bigger sensor on a camera, like a professional digital camera, than on the iPhone. But there's different software inside of them. So that's the first thing. You have what we're filming right now. These are full frame. So if you go back
Here, I'll show what we're filming real quick here, right here.
So this is a Lumix, what is it? S5 II? S5 II?
S5 Mark II. This is another view of it. S5 Mark II.
With a 24-105 lens, also made by Lumix. So you have full frame. So full frame is the largest sensor, I think, for most commercially available cameras. And the bigger the sensor, the more light you can take in, which means you do better in low light settings. So the camera we filmed this podcast with does a better job in low light settings compared to my camera, because it's a micro 4/3, but this will still do a better job than an iPhone in general because of sensor size.
And your goal with this camera is to obtain what capabilities above and beyond your iPhone?
Right. I think I just wanted crystal clear, high quality, either 4K or 1080p HD videos for family events, you know, taking videos of the kid and family and having those memories, because I think that's become less and less, like long videos of families like we used to do when we had VHS tapes inside our things as a kid. I would watch those for hours. That's kind of gone away. So I wanted to get back to that, get longer memories at higher quality. And then just for like what we do, for example, I set up the tripod the other day in the OR, and I can film so people can see what my hands are doing while they're also seeing the surgical microscope video, and we can sync those. So you get a sense of what it's like to actually be in the room having surgery. And with an iPhone, I guess you could do it, but it's just not going to look as good. And I want the quality of the film pointing at me to be as high as the film we point at the patient's eye, if that makes sense. So it should be the same. I don't want it to be a mismatch. And then incidentalloma was, I didn't really plan to do a lot of photographing. I thought mostly I was going to do video, but actually kind of fun to take pictures, like really good pictures of things, and to capture these memories with your family or whoever, or bugs. Like on one of my slides here, if you go to slide 11, this is just showing outside my house. This is a Texas spiny lizard. And what I really wanted to demonstrate with this was the difference in settings. So
Same camera.
Same moment or moments. I changed the white balance and I adjusted it and kind of tuned it up. But it's just fun to capture these images. Like if you go to slide 13, there are geckos that live outside my house. And this is a gecko that he perches up by my front door. And it was just fun. I mean, it's not the greatest picture because I have a micro four thirds.
What I found over time is you want to capture memories and you want the best pictures possible to store as those memories. And then when you're capturing video, you want it to look the best because you're storytelling, and a story is more visually pleasing to watch and follow along if it looks good.
Yeah.
So, and then the next part of it or aspect is the story is, if you're doing video, is much more compelling if it sounds good, hence microphones, audio.
Right. That's the next phase. And so actually your brother was generous enough to give me one of these, also not sponsored. It's a Rode Wireless Go 2. Well, anyway, this is a wireless microphone. So you don't need these big guys, right? When you're out in the world talking to people, it's nice to have smaller ones. You have your own. You were showing me earlier too, a different brand. But yeah, first step, visual. Second step, audio. And then bring it all together. And then production, you have to have a sense of what you're doing. And I've been trying to learn how to use this like a mechanic uses an old car, or like could repair an old car. Like I'm going to use as little help from the machine as I can. I use autofocus, but I'm picking what kind of autofocus I'm using. I'm setting the white balance.
Yes.
I'm picking the aperture size, so how open the camera is.
How are you doing that?
So it's a setting, excuse me, on here. So you turn the thing on, and you have different dials on your camera. Every camera is a little different, and we're going to be talking about Lumix. So if you're in different settings, so if you're in A, which is aperture priority, when I toggle this wheel, and it's going to be hard to see, but it changes the aperture size. Apertures are described in f stops or f numbers. So it's a little confusing with aperture because the aperture number, the bigger the aperture, so the bigger the hole that your camera is looking out of, the smaller the number. Very confusing.
The smaller the number, the bigger the diameter of the pupil or the aperture.
Right. So it's just like a human pupil or animal pupil. So if you're...
And it starts at 1.4 and it goes up to 16?
It can go lower than 1.4. And again, we're kind of novices here, but the bigger the aperture, the more light, and that helps you in dark settings. So if I'm doing a shoot or a photo of a gecko at night, I'm going to want a larger aperture, but there's a trade-off. And what you're showing here with this triangle is the exposure triangle. Exposure is basically, what's the description? It's your ability to... How would you describe exposure? It's the way, the overall lighting or quality of image, I guess is how you would describe it.
It's the amount of ambient light in a scene. That's the way I think of it.
Okay.
So if the scene appears dark when I'm taking a video, I increase the exposure, and it just seems like somebody turned up the lights in the room.
But when you're increasing the exposure, there's sort of an artificial way to do that. There's a button on the camera that can increase exposure, but you're
It's
also...
that plus minus one, right?
Yeah, plus minus is exposure compensation. But I think that's a digital modification.
But that's the only one I use for exposure.
Right. That's an artificial way, but what you're also really doing or can be doing is actually affecting the other settings so that you change exposure in a different way. So shutter speed. So if the longer the sensor has exposure to light, the more light it absorbs. that means like a slow shutter speed. So it's open for a long time and then it closes.
Yes.
Versus a fast shutter speed is like click, really quick. So
Right.
just a small amount of time that the sensor is exposed to
Right.
light.
So when you're photographing like a cheetah running fast or a hummingbird's wings
Yep.
flapping very fast, you want a very quick shutter speed.
Right. So that you can capture that fast moment. But the trade-off, right, is that you're going to lose light.
Yes.
So you have to compensate for that. It's all about balancing your forces so that you get a good image. If I have too fast of a shutter speed, but my aperture's small, I'm double doing, if I have a fast shutter speed and a small aperture, I'm really limiting the amount of light that gets into my sensor because the light can't get through the small hole and the hole's only open for a short period of time. So that's a problem.
Is this what you're talking about? This exposure triangle thing?
Yeah, that's the same. They're both the same thing. And then we didn't talk about ISO or ISO. That's the international standard, the International Organization for Standardization. It's a light sensitivity measure. So basically your camera through digital techniques can be more or less sensitive to light. And it's way different than the plus minus button I was talking about before. And the higher you make the ISO, the higher you make it sensitive to light, the more you're able to pick up on things, but you're also going to get more noise because you're increasing the just overall sort of jumpiness or sensitivity of the camera to the light. And so you have to balance all three of them. And the camera does a good job. Like if you go pure manual, which is the M setting on your Lumix camera, you control everything. You control the ISO, and you can make it manual ISO. You can adjust the aperture size and the shutter speed all boom, boom, boom right here without even having to look away from the camera. And learning the balance between those two things it's hard, or three things. It's really hard to do, but I think it's good practice.
I just use the auto setting for everything, pretty much.
Sure.
Because if that's my occupation, I'm going to pay attention to it. But if I'm just doing things on the fly and setting everything up, like to set up what we have here, it's just an extra depth that we have to go into to figure out all
Sure.
those settings. So I just set it on auto.
I think the camera, so the video on the Lumix cameras, again, no financial interest, is really good for video, and you don't have to do much. But I think if you're taking photos, you have to think a little more because the lighting changes so often. And I don't know, it's harder. You're only getting one chance. When you take a photo, you only get one image that you're making, and that has to be good. Versus this video, it compiles, 60 per second? If depending on your settings, and not every single one of those has to be perfectly in focus. So it's hard. It's much easier to make a good looking video.
Yeah, I guess if I were retired, I would go in depth with cameras, but I guess I don't have that time.
Hey, someday, I mean, you can, is this part of your retirement plan? Just become like a bird watcher?
I don't know.
I guess the last thing I would say is that I think photography is a really good hobby because it is generally accepted that you can take pictures of things nowadays. Like people don't freak out about that. It doesn't hurt anyone. It's super customizable. There's a lot of different price points. Like I had a different price point for this camera than you did for your camera. But there's still high quality, good stuff out there if you're willing to make a okay level of investment. And again, it creates things you have forever. You said, how long does it take per minute of video that you do? How much editing do you do per minute?
I'm getting faster. So I just created a video yesterday and today. It's 15 minutes long. I started, let's think about the time investment. I wrote the script for that video, posted today, Thursday. Took about 45 minutes to write the script.
45 minutes to write the script?
And then yesterday I was filming here from about 3 to 5:30, 2.5 hours. So now we're up to, let's say, 3 hours. And then I started editing it last night. That took about 2 hours. So we're now 5.5 hours. And then this morning I was up early and I got it done by another 5 hours. So it took about 10 hours.
10 hours for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So you're, what is it? I should be able to do the math.
It used to be an hour per minute of video. So now I'm a little bit faster.
There you go. So you're like a 0.66. Okay. That's pretty good. But if you could just minimize, like basically you have to do more takes, but it's usually faster to do a take than it is to do an edit for me. Like if I could just knock out a stream of consciousness or a pseudo pre-planned statement, that saves me time.
It's much quicker to create a 1 minute video, because let's say I'm doing a 1 minute video and I have to recite something for 20 seconds 3 times to fill that video. For me to recite 20 seconds is pretty fast, and for me to review it and repeat it if I don't say it right is pretty fast. But if you have to compound that times 15, it's much more time intensive. 1 minute videos are pretty fast.
They're fast, but even longer ones I'm trying to do, or I'll do, okay, maybe I'll try to do 1 minute chunks. Nail a minute, nail a minute, nail a minute.
It's hard.
Put it together
Like
quicker
this morning,
in post.
here, I'll show you. We'll take a little detour. So
Nice.
just the first, okay, so you had to create a thumbnail.
Yeah, that takes time too. I always that's the last thing I do. And I make my video and I'm like, oh shit,
I need to
make a thumbnail.
I need to buy a program that helps me create a thumbnail.
Oh, you just use PowerPoint, right?
Okay, so I had to set up the cameras. I have a computer nearby with what I want to say. I had to procure the props from our office.
that takes what, like 10 minutes maybe to walk
and
around,
then
get lost.
And then I had to, I'm doing this where nobody else is at the office, and I can just think, plan, completely isolated, so nobody makes a noise where I have to start all over again.
Yeah.
And then you set up the camera, you frame it just right, you make sure everything is set, you've got your SD card in, your microphones are on, the lighting's right, I've got my background set. And then I had to think, okay, well, I heard this song by Mary J. Blige earlier in the week, and I go, I like that song. I'm going to use that song for this video. Yeah, I realize it'll strike this video from ever being able to make a cent.
Oh, yeah,
but I don't care.
demonetizes.
I don't really care.
Yeah.
But because I wanted to use the video, I mean the music.
Sure.
And so then I thought of the topic, premium lens implants, and so this 30 seconds probably took, for me to edit it and everything, it probably took 2.5 hours.
Yeah. Nice. Ooh. Nice.
Putting in the graphics
Takes time.
takes time. That took a long time.
That was cool. I'm impressed by that. That was really cool.
But it's captivating for the first 25 seconds.
You got them. They're hooked.
That's the hope. I don't know.
Nailed it. Oh, man.
So
Oh,
it's
and you're dancing too?
just kind of shaking the head.
That's good.
Pretty impressed with those moves, huh, Max?
I'm blown away. I've never, wow. You can cut a rug. That's really cool. So yeah, it's a labor of love, all this stuff. I mean, there's nothing easy. The iPhone makes it seem like all this stuff is easy, but
And they say the most valuable camera is the camera you have with you.
right.
So you're not carrying around your Lumix.
I
least
do
that I
a
know of.
lot. I have
You
a
do?
shoulder bag so that I can take it. I took it to soccer this morning, my kid's soccer. I took photos. It's an advantage of the Micro Four Thirds. You lose the low light or whatever. You have a smaller sensor, but the smaller the sensor, the smaller the camera, the lighter the weight. It's much easier for me to carry this around all day than it would be to carry around that all day. I don't think anyone should feel pressured to get these kind of cameras to do videoing. Even if you have an active YouTube presence, if you're doing more casual TikTok-y, Instagram stuff, I think it's overkill. It probably adds too much work and time to the whole process. This is, again, a labor of love, like we said before.
But I would say most of the people who I really follow on YouTube who are storytelling and content creators on YouTube, they use DSLR cameras.
But that's their job. like a lot of people are hobbyists. I guess
Yeah.
we're hobbyists too, but
Yeah.
they're hobbyists in a way that really I don't know if they need to spend all the money.
Yeah.
and
If you want to
time.
take your production quality to the next level, that's the next level,
Right.
above and beyond what everybody has with
And
them.
that thing does a pretty good job.
Mm-hmm.
And you can get a tripod. And the one I bought from Amazon for $40 has an iPod or an iPhone attachment. So you can
Yes.
click it in and do basically the same thing. All right. So I think we can probably wrap it up here.
Do
All
the
right. So we
intro.
should do our outro, our standard thing. Are you ready?
Yes. So thank you for watching Seeing Eye to Eye, episode 7,
Yes.
which was a kind of a potpourri of technology, social media,
Paranoia.
and photography.
Yeah. As they all go together. Classic topics. You always start with robots and you end with photography. That's,
Thank you. Thank you to anybody who took the time to listen to us.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Thank you for seeing eye to eye.